guys, Booligan here with Booligan Airsoft and Shooting Sports. Going to start the official build here on the Traditions Flintlock Trapper 50 caliber muzzle loading pistol kit. Your first step in this process is obviously going to be to look at the kit and make sure that you have all of the components. There's a really good manual that it comes with for both the percussion cap and the Flintlock models, but a lot of the parts, obviously, aside from the lock, are going to be the same. But what you want to do is you want to make sure that you have all of the parts. That's kind of the first crucial part of any proper gun build. The next step in the process is the rough fitting, is the dry fitting, kind of the test fitting of everything. You'll notice in some of these, the wood, some of the parts is just a little bit rough. That's to be expected. These are kits, so you're going to want to use the finest tools possible that you have to make small adjustments to it. Just clean up some of the wood, some of the areas where it might be a little proud, specifically when working with pieces like the lock, the trigger assembly. An example of some of the things that you need to do on these. So let's just look at the front cap, for example. So this guy kind of sits in here like this. Obviously, how and where it's going to sit is going to be related to when your actual barrel is in place. But when you look, so like even kind of at its best position, it's a little proud there, kind of sticks up a little bit. So you're going to need to take some time with either like a file or a rasp. I'm going to be doing a lot of work with a belt sander, just kind of taking my time and smoothing all of these little areas out that don't quite line up 100%. The nice part is on mine, the important part, the trigger assembly just kind of locks right in. And of course, now that I mention it, after I've done about 5 test fittings, I'm not going to be able to do it correctly. But it locks very securely in place, and I don't think I'm going to need to do any real tinkering around with that to get that where it needs to be. Just, you can see there's little bits of wood in there that need to be cleaned up, you know, for where that actual trigger moves. So you just want things to be as clean as possible. Things like the trigger guard, it's just, you can see the rough kind of casting marks on here. They're not finished pieces, so you might need to take a sander or something like that and you know, trim those pieces down a little bit. So that's what we're going to do in this video. I'm going to have a camera over my shoulder as best as possible, just kind of taking stuff out and test fitting and taking out and test fitting and taking out and test fitting. We're not going to capture everything because I don't have the equipment to get that on video, but we're going to be kind of looking at some of the important parts and just kind of looking over my shoulder a little bit as I do some of the test fitting. One of the things I'm also going to be doing on this build, I love the design of the gun. This little hump right here, I understand the purpose for it, kind of keeps it better in your hand, but this build's all about aesthetics for me, and I have a very interesting aesthetic goal in mind. So we're going to be sanding off that little hump right there, make it more of a kind of traditional, just, you know, back end on that grip. So we'll do that as well in the test fitting. But let's go to the belt sander and let's do a little bit of work on this. After a few minutes with some sandpaper, there was really nothing very exciting there to show. The thing is kind of a rough fit. A couple of the things you can see that we will need to deal with. One, that does not line up very well at all, where this butt cap is versus where the wood ends. Same thing with the inside of the grip. You've got a lot of grip wood material here that kind of needs to go. This is where it's going to be very handy to have a belt sander, because I'm going to be able to make quick work of this stuff. Same thing up here at the front, as I mentioned. You've got parts of that front cap that are proud. They're just standing up of the wood, and of course that ledge. So what we're going to do now, we're going to take the barrel and the lock out of the gun itself, and we're just going to be working with the wood and the brass hardware, and that way we're going to be able to kind of sand and do the pieces, you know, get the wood pieces smoothed out that we need. And then once all that's put together, we'll wrap this video up just kind of by showing what the next steps are in finishing. Let's go ahead and let's do some work on the belt sander.
Along
Okay, with the rough shaping done, a little rougher than I'd like because I am real bad at a belt sander. But with the rough shaping done with the belt sander, what we can do now is we can hit it with the actual hand sandpaper. So that's going to take off all of our sanding marks, both on the wood and on the brass pieces. So what's going to follow now is a whole lot of boring hand sanding. Let's do it. So obviously there's a lot of different ways to, finish one of these builds, and to kind of get it to the, rough shape that it's currently in. I use the belt sander. It's not as precise, and as such I had to go over a lot of the sanding marks that I did with with hand sanding, with hand just sandpaper of varying grits to get it really, kind of smooth out, because it was a little chunky, especially like down here where I didn't have the best angle on it. But you can do it with hand files, with rasps, with just different grains of sandpaper. There's basically no wrong way to do one of these builds. So that kind of is going to wrap up this video. This sort of the test fitting and just like rough building of it. You'll see I got rid of that little hand hump. Obviously this thing's going to get more muzzle flip back in my hand, but I don't really care. This thing's going to be a gun for fun. And, off camera, I may get rid of this little doodad down here too. So the next video that we're going to do on this is going to be on finishing it. So that's going to be like the hand fitting, bluing the barrel, staining the grip, getting a good final polish on all the brass furniture, and so on and so forth. So again, many thanks to Traditions Firearms for working with me on putting this thing together and kind of satisfying my weird desire to build a gun that I saw on a Disneyland ride. So stay tuned for the next video in the series of the making of my Traditions Flintlock Trapper pistol.